Welcome to the JSWorld Podcast. And normally, the JSWorld Podcast happens during the JSWorld Conference, where passionate people is organizing the conference, and they have all the speakers together, and they get to chat to the speakers and make podcasts. But in between, there's nothing. And that's why we're here. And this would be the first installment of the JSWorld Podcast in between conferences. And so I'm here with the folks that actually are organizing ViteConf, but they're also in the core of what Vite is. They're building it, they're figuring it out, or being the CEO of StackBlitz. That's something. So guys, thank you for joining us and welcome. How about we start with a little round of introductions? Evan, how about you go first?
Sure. Hello. I'm Evan. I am the author of Vite and Vue and a bunch of other things. And I primarily work on open source. Yeah, that's all I do, basically.
There we go. Who wants to go next?
Me? All right, I'll go.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, I'm Eric Simons. I'm the co-founder and CEO of StackBlitz, which is like an instant web-based IDE that runs in your browser. Kind of our main trick is actually we've written this like WebAssembly operating system that runs in your browser tab. So it's not actually running on a server, so it's like super fast. But yeah, so if you've ever gone to like vite.new to kind of spin up a new Vite project, that's like running on top of our stuff. And yeah, so that's I like making things run in browsers. That's what I like to do.
Awesome. All right, so next.
Nice. Yeah, I'm Matias Capelletto, but I think that most people know me as Patak. I'm part of the Vite core team. Like I was there when Evan created the team. I was one of the first ones to be there. And yeah, now I'm working for StackBlitz since the beginning of the year. And yeah, it has been great to be able to have a lot of time to focus on that. And lately on ViteConf, at least until it's over.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So much to unpack just from the intros. So we'll have a few questions lined up. Anyways, let's get started about talking a bit about this conference. Because generally, people don't know what happens when you organize a conference. There's lots of processes going on. And so first off, who between this group actually came up with the fact, hey, I want to do ViteConf, let's kick it off?
Yeah.
Not me.
There you go.
I can take that one. Yeah, like there was some chatting in the community, like Dominic from the Svelte team, they do this as Svelte Summit. They do it like twice a year. And it's like a great, let's say, community organized thing. Now they have like more backing, but they were, for a lot of years, they were community organized. So there were some ideas, but organizing a conference, I think, from the other side, that is like a massive amount of work. So like my answer when they were coming with this was like, yeah, but who will do all this and who will sponsor this thing or how it will work? And once I joined StackBlitz, one of the first conversations that we had with Eric actually said like, hey, what about a ViteConf or like a conference or something like that? And from there, we started to discuss and like we talk also with Evan to see what he thought about the idea. And yeah, I think he liked it. And
well, evidently.
Yeah.
And so interestingly here, like thinking about if you come up with a conference like this, is there a specific why? Like why would the audience show up for this one? Or is it mainly just this thing is so new, there's so much amazing stuff going on, let's just get all these people together that work on it? Like, or is there something else behind this?
Yeah, I think. Well, I remember when we first talked. Well, I guess StackBlitz's involvement in the Vite community. It was like about a year ago. When I personally really started to take notice of what was going on with the Vite ecosystem, and what was really cool about it. It's pretty rare. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that's kind of brought together all the different framework ecosystems like what Vite has done. And so that the more I talked with Matthias, it kind of became clear to me that there was something special going on in this ecosystem. And, there's a lot of different conferences now that get run online. And so that was kind of, for me, why it seemed like a good place to. I mean, there's a lot of cool work happening in the Vite ecosystem that I was just following on Twitter or whatever. But it was like, this stuff should be, this stuff should have a spotlight. This stuff, should really have its own day where kind of all of the latest and greatest it's really become the epicenter of web development. So to me, that was kind of, where the idea kind of bounced off of my head, where it just seemed to make a lot of sense, to give the community a place to actually have a day to just show the amazing stuff that's kind of happening. But that just kind of, from my perspective, those are the reasons that, to me, it made a lot of sense for something to be put together where, everyone in the JavaScript ecosystem could get brought together and actually, talk about the latest things they're building,
Yeah, that's awesome. The fact that it's actually so wide ranging from all these different frameworks, that seems quite new, because we love to be quite partisan in what we choose, right, with our front end. Yeah. And so with that in mind, like with all these, you have the potential of so many speakers that are so different. So Evan, did you guys work together to figure out, okay, who are we asking for this? Or are we just going to be reactive and see what comes up? And when you did that, did you have some sort of like maybe diversity policy in mind or something like that?
To be honest, I wasn't super involved in picking who to talk. I think it's mostly Matthias, but we kind of already have a vague idea of who's gonna show up, because we've been, as a team, Vite has been very actively collaborating with our ecosystem partners. All these people building their thing on top of Vite. We communicate with them all the time. They hang out in the ecosystem channel, our Discord server, all the time. So we have a pretty good idea. Like, we know there are a lot of people building on top of Vite, so we have a very good chance of being able to get them on board.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about the Vite thing itself in a sec. Maybe one last thing about the conference, and then we'll just dive into like Vite and StackBlitz itself. So when you actually look at the marketing you guys have been doing, like all the things on Twitter, it looks incredible. And of course, that's part of the process. You know what needs to look good and you make it happen. However, I'm sure, based on experience of attending and speaking at many conferences myself, there must have been some crazy moments or something that went wrong that you completely didn't expect. So Matthias, do you have any like spinal tap moments? Or if not, perhaps you have some advice for, let's say, if I want to organize a conference, what would that entail? What kind of hurdles did you find?
Yeah, I think that one of the main points was that it was like in this group, like the first conference that was organized. So there was a lot of moments of like how to do the things, no? Like, and also it was about how to do a conference that is like has the vibe of the community, no? Like has all these things that we have been talking about. One, like the pitch that Eric or what Evan said, like we started to talk with the speakers, and as soon as we say like, hey, we are thinking of organizing this with all the project's main, let's say, like maintainers, they were all like, yeah, let's go, let's do it.
Oh, nice. So, well, that's a good start to have, right?
yeah, totally. Because like actually finding speakers is, I think it's difficult, but in this case, like the Vite and actually the ecosystem in particular, it was kind of like something that was there and it should happen. So everybody just like jumped in. And about particular moments, I don't know, the day we like released the tickets.
Okay, here we go.
Don't bring this up, Matthias.
No, yes, please. They were not like long.
I'm kidding.
They were not.
This
long
is why we do the podcast. Let's go.
There wasn't like 2 hours discussion in a Zoom call about how to fix a caching issue. That didn't happen. Everything was smooth.
Everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Did this involve the thing of creating your own? Oh, sorry. Go on.
Evan participated on that.
Yeah, so I was the one. I was basically the. Matthias sent me the link privately for me to test the first ticket. I was supposed to get 000.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a caching issue that when I posted it on Twitter, and it was just not showing up. And I tried it again, and somehow a few minutes later it just started working, so it was all good. Actually.
Okay, so that's not the worst.
It was. It took us.
It was a bit awkward because we were like so excited. We are like, okay, I'm gonna share this like number 0 ticket, and it's like, oh, it's not actually loading.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Imagine sorry, go on, Eric.
Yeah, we launched. The conference launched on the first week. My co-founder and CTO was out of the office, and he's like our DevOps cloud infra guy. So we were just scrambling to figure out how to fix like some CloudFront proxy. So the way we solved is we literally just removed the caching. And we were just, I think it's still hitting a Lambda literally directly to generate. Yeah. That was like that was the solution. We were just like, all right, we're just gonna go for it. And that fixed it.
A Lambda should be okay. You just have a warm up time or a cold start. But for the rest, it's on. It should be okay, I guess.
Yeah, as long as no one, we're probably paying a little bit more. I mean,
don't give others ideas, Eric.
Oh boy. Okay. Now not about to DDoS this Lambda.
I shouldn't have talked about this so specifically. Now they know where to hit us. But yeah, that was like nerve-wracking 2 hours. But yeah, that was fun.
Yeah,
but Matthias did a great job reaching out to. I think the other thing too is Matthias is like one of the most genuine people I've ever met in my life. And so I think Matthias has done a really good job of like going and reaching out to all these different people and getting them very organically excited. Because if you kind of look at like there's a lot of there's many great conferences out there, but when you're running it at like a business, like as a conference as a business sort of thing, it's kind of hard to separate kind of the marketing kind of aspect, So Matthias has done a great job.
I would just want to add to that point because it's usually like as a developer myself, when people invite me to a conference, if I see it's organized by a for-profit company, I'm just naturally kind of suspicious, like, is this just a pure marketing thing, right? So for so many people to just instantly say yes, it's important because they are contacted by someone they trust. And this trust is built by Matthias's work with the community because he works with these guys every day. And when they hear, okay, it's you asking me to join this conference, I trust you. So I think that's very important. Yeah.
Dev advocacy, even for this stuff, is really important. And Matthias, you did a great job because we didn't speak to each other before this, but I knew of the conference, all my friends were either speaking or going. And so something there organically happened and you got the gold there. And I just looked at my ticket. I'm number 19,429. Imagine how many tickets you guys did with that one Lambda. I kind of like it. That's success there. Like next year, you'll rival NextConf, where it was basically sold out in 2 minutes, I think. So how about that? All right. So, sorry, did you want to say something, Lance?
No. We've been pretty surprised, at least internally, of how how wide this thing, because Vite is when you have like a framework specific conference, especially like the React sort of conferences, it's a huge pool, and
exactly.
It works. Vite is like a build tool, so it's been pretty amazing to see the uptake of people that are interested in this stuff. And I mean, if you kind of compare it to like the first Next.js conf, because the Vercel folks are the ones who really like the online ticketing thing. I think they really pioneered that. The first one they threw for Next.js conf was, I think it was like 3,000 or 3,500 tickets that they gave or something like that. So I think that really speaks to like the Vite community. Honestly, is like the amount of turnout that's actually happened here. Because it looks like this week it's going to crack 20,000 people coming to this thing. So that's I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, it clearly is. And let's talk about Vite itself a little, because I remember doing a conference talk about Vite and Vite Press, like when it just came out. And so it was probably quite different then than it is now. And I already knew this is going to be something. I was just kind of waiting so it would go into the Vue ecosystem. And then it just exploded, kind of. And so, Evan, talking about Vite, like what I want to know is kind of what inspired it. And maybe once you tell us what inspired it, how did it inspire you? Was it kind of like a developer's brainwave in the shower? Or did you have like an itch to scratch about some tool that didn't work? Or like, Walk us through like the self-talk that you had when you figured this, like, oh, there's this thing that I know how to build. Let's just try this stuff. Like, what would go into your mind?
Yeah, so I'll be basically giving a preview of my talk here, but so I'll keep it a little bit brief.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So so it kind of goes back to the history because I worked on Vue first, right? And Vue came out when like basically build tooling wasn't even a thing. So the first version of Vue was just a script. You include it on a page and it works. So then there was Node.js. I mean, Node.js was around already, but it wasn't very common for people to think, okay, you actually need a build tool to build a web project. But then there was Browserify and Webpack, and people started bundling stuff, right? And by bundling stuff, like there are loader APIs. So you can, one day I was messing with these Browserify plugins. And I realized, okay, this plugin can do a lot of things. So I can write a plugin to transform this format, single file component, which Vue has, into JavaScript. So and I thought it was a really cool idea. So that was, obviously that idea also got inspired by a bunch of other things. But the short story is I started building tooling for Vue itself and ended up building Vue CLI, which is this high-level thing built on top of Webpack. So that you can finally just say, okay, Vue, create a project, and you get everything ready to go. So that was my experience building all these tooling on top of Webpack. It was very complex, a lot of configuration, a lot of...
I've seen it. Guillaume showed me, and that is like, that's some serious stuff. But you know what?
Yeah.
I was around when that came out and we were doing huge Vue projects. It was really nice to have though. So you abstract the complexity away, and it's kind of the narrative.
So for me, I basically have the first-hand experience of dealing with build tool complexity. And I try to abstract it away for Vue users. And, you know, over time, it just, but there was this point where node modules were so heavy and installation was slow. And I was building projects myself and was like, okay, this is just painful because I'm saving a file. I'm waiting for 4 to 5 seconds for things to reload. And one day I saw, okay, yes, modules just landed in browsers natively. What if we can just go back to the no build tool days and just have everything over native VS modules? And then the initial idea was, okay, like if I have a dev server, intercept those requests, do the transform on the server side, we can have something. So that was in 2019. I got a very crude proof of concept, just transformed Vue single file components for a native VS module. It worked, but I was super busy with Vue 3 back then, so it just kind of got left aside. And a year later, I was thinking about, so I guess I was writing some documentation for Vue 3 using VuePress, which was based on Webpack again, and I was like, this is
yes,
really messing with my my flow. And I was like, I wish there's something like this, but just faster. So I got back to the prototype that I had, and I was like, what if I can just do hot module replacement over this thing? And I was thinking and thinking, and one day it just suddenly struck, and I just pulled an all-nighter, got a prototype working, and so I got, essentially it was a prototype, just got hot module replacement working over native VS modules, but it was only for Vue. Like the whole idea initially was just to get Vue single file components working. And it just kind of started there. Once the idea clicked and I got the prototype working, the rest kind of feels it just falls into place. It's just like, I got the most important part solved first. So everything else is just like making sure it gets feature parity with Vue CLI. And
exactly.
And because of the experience building Vue CLI, like essentially all the other questions were just like actually writing the code, because the key part that I wanted was already there. Yeah.
Imagine, it's really cool, right? That you have two of these moments where you first write Vue and then you do Vite, and they both change the game so much. How does that feel? It's kind of like, do you feel like responsible for like an ecosystem or something, or are you just
Definitely,
okay? I have a
yeah.
great team, let it run. Like what happens there?
It is a bit different between Vue and Vite. So for Vue, I'm still super hands-on. So for Vue, because Vue is a kind of a bigger, it's the scope is a bit bigger. Like we have the core framework, then we have other pieces like the router, the tooling part,
Yep.
and the dev tools, our IDE support, and everything. So each of these are kind of discrete projects in themselves. They have some reliance, but they are pretty well decoupled to the point where I can focus on Vue core, and some of our team members will be pretty much taking over these other separate projects, so we can kind of coordinate them together. But for Vite, it's more like so when I finished Vite 2, I knew like now I have to split time between the two projects, and I felt okay, like I can't really actually be this hands-on for two projects at the same time. So I thought the team was super necessary. So it took me a very long time to actually establish the Vite team. But for Vite, I was like, soon as I released 2.0, which is technically the actual 1.0, I was like, okay, we need a team. Like I want to have the community to actually take this forward instead of just me doing all these things. So I'm super lucky to have, Matthias actually joining the project, because he has been, very, very critical for Vite's growth beyond Vite 2, right? Because like to be honest, I enjoy just like focusing on the code a lot more, and like outreaching with all these different partners, this kind of work. I wouldn't say I don't enjoy it. It's just like I personally don't really have that much energy, and Matthias just kind of fills that connection really, really well. Like, and he's just really natural with just building really good relationship with people, building on top of it, and brings in really good feedback, because a lot of times it's important to have these opinions from these people actually using your stuff, so that as a team we can make better decisions to see, okay, does this make sense? This is what they want, but does it make sense for us? Does it make sense for what we wanted to build in the first place? And having all these information in the process is important. And I think that's what made Vite, the community, so active, because people know their feedback is actually being valued.
Yeah, exactly. I would argue that both of these sides are equally important, and then together you get something like StackBlitz behind you, and suddenly it's a thing that goes hard. And so let's talk about StackBlitz in the sec. But first I want to go to Matthias, because you joined this team quite early, right? And you've used it quite a bit. And so when I was thinking about this question, it's like there are some other tools that don't do exactly like Vite, but they're, in the ballpark. So what made Vite, in your opinion, so basically the one thing that you want to use over, let's say, something else? I won't name names because that might not be cool, but why is Vite so successful over the competition, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that what happened in Vite 2, actually, there were some decisions from Evan between Vite 1 and Vite 2 that actually, like, a lot of that decisions were informed by the competition. Because
exactly,
one of the key, for example, to success to me was the universal rollup plugin system that works like both in dev and build. It's kind of like now we give it for granted, because like, how it will be differently, no? But that was an idea from WMR, from the Preact folks.
Yeah.
So I think that there were some key decisions, and it wasn't a easy moment, and I imagine, because Vite 1 was about to be already in beta, no?
Yeah.
Or in RC. In RC already.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And there it was like kind of like, no, this is not how we should go. Like there was a discussion, and everyone said like, okay, no, let's put the right pieces first, and then we go. And once that pieces were there in place and the community started to form, like we created a Discord, and that got like active very soon with a lot of folks, a lot of maintainers from all these projects starting to collaborate together. And I don't know, we at one point we started to see Rich Harris asking questions there, and then
That's supposed to be a fun moment.
yeah, and like Velkit at one point moved from Snowpack to Vite, and that in part was also because of a decision of Evan to grab the ideas of like the SSR primitives and like put it like as a built-in into Vite. So it was like once like Rich saw that this like Vite is roll up first, like I think it made like a lot of sense for them to go there. And afterwards it was like one project after another, like as Evan said, like an ecosystem of people that like really are helping each other starting to form, and some very active team members also started to appear. So the issues were like very fast, triage and like fixes like were around the corner. So yeah, kind of that happened. And later on, this is, I think, one of the ideas behind ViteConf. What we're going to see is like all these projects, all the ecosystem. There is a vibe of like sharing ideas and patterns and like non-zero sum game. You know, like there is a lot of I don't know. Like sometimes it's happened that there are like friction, let's say, when like someone came up with an idea, but this is open source, so we share, like it should be like that. And in Vite in particular, and the projects around, like I think we are seeing a moment where it is not like Vue against all others or like Svelte against all other. It is like, look, maybe there is in the future like one framework like React that will take it all. Maybe it is like there is a space for all of us. Like Evan usually says something like choose what it makes sense for your head. I think he said that.
Yeah, and I'm one thing I'm super happy about the Vite ecosystem is we see all these frameworks that's building on top of Vite. Like we have reached a status where we are no longer saying like you cannot do anything that we're doing. Instead, we're saying, okay, like there are in fact a lot of things that's common between us. So let's make them a convention and maybe put them into a common share layer that's below us. And then we can all just focus on the things that differentiates us. Like we're just exploring these interesting different stuff instead of all rebuilding the same thing over and over again.
I'm getting such a fuzzy feeling here. I love this stuff. You don't see it that often, to be honest, in our world. And so it almost feels like what I know from the Vue community is that it's really a friendly community, but that's really rubbing off here as well, but then it goes everywhere. And so, Eric, how did you guys with StackBlitz actually get involved here?
Well, I think, and I actually have a question for Evan or Matthias as related to this, but basically, so I think we launched Web Container, which is this, in-browser operating system that runs Node.js like in your browser tab. We launched that back in May of 21. And I remember it was super alpha back then. So they couldn't run everything. And Vite was one of the things that it couldn't run at that point. And I remember, Evan, I think you had tweeted us once or twice. Every month on our release notes, a couple of them you tweeted us, hey, have you gotten ES build working in this thing? Because I want to run Vite. And so finally went to the top of the ticket. You were like, all right, we're supporting ESM, we're supporting ES build. Like, is this clearly there's something going on here? And so kind of in that process, I'd heard of Vite, but I hadn't actually taken a closer look at kind of what was going on, because there were a whole bunch of things at that time that were kind of grabbing headlines and attention, whatever have you. But when I actually dug into it, I remember I was looking at the Vite docs. I was I think I was laying in bed one night, couldn't fall asleep. I was I'm curious, what is this thing? So I was scrolling the docs, and what really sold me was that there's kind of this transition that happened where it was obvious that the previous gen tooling that was entirely JavaScript based, like bundlers, etc., the performance wasn't going to cut it. And so there's been this push to use native based tooling to speed up the compilation. But kind of what was getting lost on that end of things is that that meant that JavaScript developers didn't have the knowledge or tools to modify their tool chain. Because if I have to like write plugins in like Rust or Go or something, I can't do that, right? And most people are not going to be able to do that. And what was brilliant about and on top of that, because these are new ecosystems, there's no plugins available in these things for the most part. So once you hit a wall, it's like, I don't know, do I go learn Rust, I guess, to write a plugin? And what was brilliant to me about what Vite had, so this is my question is who, how did this one come to be? Because from the outside looking in, the choice of using the Rollup.js plugin API on top of ESBuild, in my opinion, was an absolutely brilliant, pragmatic decision for two reasons. One is that it allows you to, as a JavaScript developer, I can modify my tooling still, right? And the Rollup plugin and API is pretty, is pretty small, so it's not like it's going to add a whole bunch of overhead or something. But the second thing is Rollup's been around for 4 or 5 years. So there's already an ecosystem of these plugins available. So you're not the chicken and egg problem of, there's not a plugin for, this transform I need. No, there probably is, right? So I thought that was just a very brilliant, pragmatic decision where the core of the thing is this native-based, compiler. The plugin API is this very lightweight JavaScript one. And that also means that the way it's architected is you can change the internals of how the compilation happens at some point in the future completely transparently to the end user, which means that this thing's got, I think, in my view, knock on wood, this has got a pretty, durable future, because it means that if, as more and more things are available native or whatever changes need to happen, it's something that will just happen under the hood. But anyway, so that was I can't remember where I was going with this. I'm curious, Evan, how did the Rollup, how did that decision get made? I'm very curious, because to me that was from a technical point of view, huge selling point.
Yeah. So for us, ESBuild initially was only used for transpiling TypeScript and JSX, and later on, we actually still don't use ESBuild for production build. So the production build is still Rollup based, and the reason for that is Rollup is still much more mature in terms of application packaging. ESBuild is already really good for bundling libraries if you don't care about handling CSS or code splitting, loading async chunks and all that. But for that, Rollup is just still much more flexible and much more mature. So when we decided to use Rollup for production bundling, naturally, some users were trying to use Rollup plugins, and we realized, okay, WMR is doing this universal plugin thing. So the part where we use ESBuild to greatly speed up the build process is when we use ESBuild to handle the dependencies. And the key part here is we notice that in applications you have your source code and your dependencies. And in 99% of the cases, your dependencies will be JavaScript that once downloaded, it never changes, right? Your log file is essentially a hash that tells you, okay, my dependency stays the same. So if your log file stays the same, it means your dependencies don't need to change. And also, because they are already JavaScript, you don't really need plugins most of the time, which ESBuild is perfect for. So ESBuild is just, so when you use plugins ESBuild, it kind of compromises its speediness, because the whole premise is do everything on the native side as much as possible. So using ESBuild for that is just a perfect use case, because it's just so fast. And we've also noticed from our experience, typically a lot of these projects that's super slow is because they have huge dependencies with thousands of files. And traditional JavaScript-based bundler is just really bad at handling that. So that's why you see startup times of 1 minute. People literally have to wait 1 minute for their dev server to start up because they have a huge dependency. But ESBuild is able to just chuck through that in 1 second. But at the same time, we can't use ESBuild for everything else because our source code is loaded through native ESM. So we need a plugin pipeline for the source code. And also because we have people use all these source code that needs transforming: TypeScript, JSX, single file components, post CSS plugins, Tailwind, and all that, right? So for all of that, you need a system on top of native ESM with hot module replacement. But for your dependencies, which doesn't change, JSWorld is just use something that's able to handle them as fast as possible. So this actually combined gives you essentially leverages the native part to do the big dependencies fast. With native ESM and hot module replacement, your source code changes get reflected instantly. So these combined gives you essentially the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And I think that was key. Honestly, I think that's to me one of the most key decisions is and when we built Web Container too, because our kind of mission with this thing has been to solve effectively the same type of problem Vite solved, where that minute build time where you're sitting in front of your computer and you're just like waiting, right? We want to solve that same problem, not for the build time issue per se, but the context switching issue. When I need to review a bug report, I don't have to download it, install dependencies, wait forever, etc. Same thing if I want to review a pull request or create a pull request. That's maybe some stuff that we're going to be announcing at ViteConf or whatever. But so I think that when we looked at that, though, we're looking at it took us 2 years to build Web Container. And during that time, we were actually pretty concerned. We're like, we could make the fastest booting operating system plus Node.js in a browser, but it won't matter if you open a tab and you have to wait a couple of minutes for the thing to compile, right? That's true. And so that's actually when I, from that perspective, is a year ago, Vite was kind of starting the upswing. And from an architectural perspective, it just kind of ticked the boxes of okay, and from a performance perspective, was really ticking the boxes. And so to me, it at that point, it was pretty clear, this is the only thing I really see that's got a real shot, actually. This is the only thing I really see in the ecosystem that's got a real shot of pulling in JavaScript developers, allowing them to modify their tooling with the language they already know, but giving you the speed increase that is good. It's going to be required for this thing to be successful. And then when we actually got Vite support on StackBlitz, we saw a huge uptick in just from that community, using StackBlitz. That was actually one of the fastest growing communities that we saw of Web Container. So kind of across the board for us, it just made a ton of sense. We ended up, I think it was last November, we became the at that time the largest backer of Vite core development, and that's actually when I ended up talking to Matthias. Because we wanted, it seemed to make sense. Hey, maybe we can help out more, and there's other things we can do to work with this ecosystem.
So guys, listening of this, it's actually kind of lucky that this happened, because when you think about it, we've had Webpack and others around for many years, right? And we felt like we're just optimizing that path. If you look at the Rust stuff the next guys are doing, for example, it's one of those, right? The same path, but optimize it. And the fact that in that whole ecosystem is one other idea that changes the game so much, but doesn't have, I didn't need to learn anything new to use Vite, right? And then you guys combining that power where StackBlitz is literally open the browser and it's running. That's yet another thing, because when you look at the competition there, they have all these ideas about let's do big virtual containers, and so you have this whole thing, but it takes 2 minutes to set up, and I tend to be out. When I see an example on a docs page and something like that loads up, I'm like, okay, I'll just go to the next, right? It even hangs on my browser, and that's where I think. So maybe Eric, can you talk a little bit more about StackBlitz itself and how you guys came up with that idea of doing it in WebAssembly? Were you maybe looking at Figma and seeing, hey, these things, they work? Or is it a completely organic thing that you started?
No, yeah. So I think it was 5 or maybe 6 years ago now when we built the idea hit and we started building the first prototype, my co-founder and I. But I started the company with my childhood best friend. He and I have been building stuff together for the past 15, 20 years or whatever. And we learned how to code together. We built PHP you know, like JAMstack stuff back when we were kids.
Oh yeah, I remember that part.
The good stuff,
Yeah.
you know, although Laravel, you know, is actually seems to be quite popular now. So it seems like PHP has not gone away, and which is cool. But anyways, yeah. So you know, 6 years ago, we ended up stumbling across the realization, like this is kind of right as the renaissance of modern JavaScript was hitting, where we were moving away from angular.js and into this world where you like ESM was becoming a thing. It hadn't really shipped in browsers in a meaningful way though. So if you wanted to share like a CodePen-esque sort of thing online, there wasn't really a good way to do that. If you needed to like compile your Vue template or transform your react.js, but you know, in an import from npm, like that stuff, like, you know, we kind of take it for granted today, but that didn't exist. Like there's nothing to do that. And you know, we had the realization, we looked at the build tooling at the time, like Webpack or whatever, all this stuff was written in JavaScript. And we were like, you know, shouldn't it like theoretically be possible to like take Webpack and just like run it in a browser tab, you know? And you know, it's a lot more work than.
But that idea alone changed the game, which is really funny.
Yeah, so us and Code Sandbox both kind of had the same idea at that time to go and take that approach. And so kind of StackBlitz v1 and Code Sandbox v1 were both this kind of stripped down version of Webpack running in a browser. And the benefit of this is like the reason you want to run in a browser is because the traditional approach, which almost everyone does, is you run the stuff on servers. But the problem though with that is that every person who's going to come and need an environment, you got to spin up a server for them. They could be doing lots of things like mining Bitcoin or God knows what. So you got to like usually to make people log in, like Code Spaces makes you put in a credit card to use the thing. So it's like, yeah, and it tends to be a lot slower because it's, you know, across the internet. So there's all this latency. So kind of in every way, it's like a worse experience. So we're like, okay, but if you run it in a browser tab, like CodePen has, you know, pioneered, you can give it away for free. You know, you can spin these things up instantly. They keep working when you're offline. I mean, if you look at Figma and Google Docs and any other productivity application that's ever been brought to the web, they do all the compute in the browser. They're not, you know, when you're using Figma, they don't have like some GPU in the cloud that when you drag this thing here, it connects that to this. Yeah. I mean, it's not how it works. And so that was kind of the origin point. So we built that. A couple of years in, we realized, okay, we've got this Webpack thingy working in the browser. We actually know enough now where we think we could actually go a level deeper to the syscall layer and actually run Node.js itself by creating an operating system that would run in the browser. And we think we could get it to like, you know, make this WebAssembly operating system that maybe be a megabyte or two, and Node.js would be like 500K. And so it should boot within 100, 200 milliseconds. At the time it was nuts. But anyways, we ended up, you know, it took us a couple of years, ended up shipping the thing and it worked really well. But yeah, so that's kind of the from a technical perspective, kind of, you know, what our the inspiration for us was. But from like what we're trying to provide, we want, you know, it's the same thing Vite's doing, is like I shouldn't have to sit in front of my computer, run into like wait for things to compile, like things that like break, etc. All these manual steps. I should be able to just open a link and it should instantly boot, just like how designers use Figma, right? Or
exactly.
You know, it should be the same sort of experience.
There's this one thing that can hit the spot, and there's a funny analogy here that I heard someone say the other day, and it works with me too. I'm a musician. You can see some of my guitars behind there. And basically, guitarists on the floor, they have some pedals. So your cable goes in and you press the pedal and it changes your sound. And that's kind of an ever-changing thing for musicians, right? You want to, let's take that boutique-y kind of thing, or that Chinese one that's totally different. And it's always rotating. And you can still think the same about the tools that you use when building a website. And when you find the thing that works for you, it stays on that board everywhere you go. And both Vite and StackBlitz are that in my whole community, for everybody, right? If you find something that stays on the pedal board, you never want to switch it out. It's always on. You'll have something you don't have to think about. It just works. All the docs that we write at Uniform, they open a StackBlitz. Like these things are just so normal and so good. We're not touching them anymore. And
that's awesome.
I don't even need to know about the innovation. It's fine. Do it. It just happens. Everybody's happy. It's funny, right? How that's different. Where if you think about others, you have an opinion about how they do it. With StackBlitz, I don't even have an opinion. It works so well. Like it's out of this world like that. Anyways, bringing it back to Matthias. So you're doing a ton in the community, as the guys have been talking about. So if I wanted to get started with Vite, as in maybe I want to contribute something or whatever, anything around that, what would you recommend for beginners who want to just jump in with Vite? And maybe do they start with like contributing to docs or dive in? Like, what is your idea there for people?
Yeah, I think you should get a ViteConf ticket and watch the Bjorn blog. That is called Contributing 101, and it's actually explaining all these like at length.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. There is like we want that too, because part of like Vite success, also like again like after Vite 2, it has been like collaboration, no? Like all this ecosystem that we mentioned before, they not only give ideas, but like PRs are flying all the time from the maintainers, and we have this, like how the community works is that the maintainers these are like maintainers that are really used to actually make not only a good issue report, but also like dive into the code, modify it. They care about it. They are some of the maintainers of the frameworks are part of the Vite core team. So like, of course, like in Vue is well represented, like with Evan, Anthony, Soda, but also like Bjorn now like is from the Svelte team, and also now is working in Astro, and there are others that are quite involved. So yeah, Bjorn like wanted to do a talk about contributing. He's one of the main reasons that in Vite 3, our open issues went from 800 to 400. It was like a triage marathon. Safi Red, Safi Red also like has been in this mode there. And yeah, like if you want to contribute, not only with Vite, but with like any of the communities, like I would recommend first to look like what projects like resonate with you, like look in your package.json and see what tools are you using for your own projects. It's better if you contribute to something that you are using, because you are going to find bugs, you're going to...
Oh, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So like once you find like 2 or 3 communities that you like, join the Discord, see how people are like talking there, get involved in like help others in Discord. For example, like we have now a forum channel, and there are like 10, 15 questions per day of people starting to use Vite. Like go there and what you know, like try to help others. That will force you to look in the docs, try to see all the options that Vite has, like try to like ask for a reproduction and like try to like guide them. That will like teach you a lot about the tool, and you are going to naturally find places where the docs maybe are not that clear, so you can contribute.
Yeah.
Like a paragraph clarification there. And then like we get involved in triaging. That is also like the easiest way, because in Vite right now, we are almost back to 500 issues, let's say. That's like, I blame Vite.
500 is not too bad, I think. I've been in project with like 5,000, easy.
Wow.
Yeah. It still is a lot of issues. Yeah, but
of course, if you're working on this with like 5 people, yeah, of course it's.
Let's call them 500 opportunities to help. So you can go there and actually check the issues and try to. You don't even need to do a PR. You can actually open the reproduction, see if it is like a config issue. Like 50% of the issues are not going to be issues. Like it's just like some misunderstanding in how Vite works. So you could help a lot, but by saying to the maintainer, look, this issue, like it's actually like a config problem, you can close it. It's actually fix it, like if you use this other option. Or even like things like, I tried this old issue and now it's working with the latest version. Like all that helps a lot. And again, like naturally will lead you to be able to do a fixed PR in the future. Like I think that a lot of people maybe get frustrated because they try to join a community by, I don't know, like sending refactor PRs or things like that are not that helpful for maintainers to just like shuffle code around, because that is an opportunity to introduce bugs, let's say.
Oh man, your end-to-end tests are gonna not be happy with those things.
Yeah.
Right.
So that like I think like helping other people is one of the best way to get involved.
And so once you're involved a bit more, so how is your process as an open source team? Like, do you guys have like some funding? Is it similar to how you do it with the vuejs stuff, for example? Or is it different? Like, what is the setup there? Or is that something you might not talk about? I don't know. I'm just asking.
It's pretty loose. We created a team and we have I wouldn't say informal, we have a nomination kind of style. So existing team members can just nominate, say, hey, this person has been doing a lot of great work recently. Like, we should invite him or her to join the team. So then we typically just invite that person. And it's also quite loose in the sense that when you're invited, you don't get hard responsibility. This is similar to how I run the Vue team, where if you are busy with your life, you want to move on, no problem. We move you to the graduated team members, essentially, and you're welcome to come back anytime you want. In terms of funding, I personally sponsor many of our team members on GitHub. Similar to I do with the Vue team as well. We do, so I kind of serve as a proxy because I received a lot of the sponsorship directly, mostly because I want to avoid a lot of the, like when going through Open Collective, there's quite a hefty, I forgot how they call it, but like it's like more than 15%. So it's quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's intense. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of want to avoid that. So we kind of go through GitHub sponsors directly between our team members.
Which works well, right? And then it's just only Stripe takes a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. So that's much better than 15%. So yeah.
Cool, guys. So we're running up on time. I love this conversation. It's great. Is there anything any of you still want to plug? I want to hear some really fun sentences about ViteConf, I guess, or anything else. Who wants to go first?
Well, I want to say one thing, which is that I think there's not many success stories of people who have been able to create like completely self-funded ecosystems. And Evan, you've done that for both the Vue and the Vite ecosystems. That could probably deserve its own podcast. I'd actually be curious to hear about the story behind that, because like it's a rare thing, and it's like I think it's really cool. I mean, that's the most ideal way this stuff ought to work. But I got to imagine it's a big challenge to kind of build that up and kind of take that approach. But hats off, because I think that's, you know, I think it's the North Star of you know, if I were doing open source full time, that's how ideally I'd want it to work, you know.
Mm-hmm. It definitely has its own challenges, and I agree it probably deserves its own podcast. I think I've done one in the past.
I think, Evan, I've asked you about this in our previous one, like a year and a half ago, something like it, but not like an hour long of like, how do you actually scope something like this, right? What is good and what is not? And there's a lot to unpack, I think.
Yeah, I did one about living on open source, but that was kind of focused more on my personal choices. For the team management, I think there are pros and cons of these approaches. There are always challenges, you know. In a company setting, the incentives are more well defined, and you can actually have numbers defined, like, you know, the shares of stocks, your salary. But in an open source setting, it's everything is a lot more vague because people have different levels of commitment. They can come and go, and so it's a lot more in flux, and it's a lot more of just keeping in touch with people and making sure they're happy with their level of commitment. And it's a very different from managing a company, but in some way it is a kind of a management job in some way.
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine if you assemble a team like that. I'm not even sure if you can call it assemble, because people can kind of just come in. But imagine you probably have similar type of people, because imagine you have a whole crew of people that just love working together as a team. And then one person comes in who is like a complete rock star, but cannot work with them, even though it makes amazing PRs. That's not going to work for the long run, right? Because these people are going to clash. And so it's kind of like you have to curate it, but nudge it a certain way, I imagine. I haven't done it that way, not in open source, like in my tech teams, yes, but then it's in such a scope that this is your salary, this is how it all works. It's very different.
Yeah, I think the fundamental difference is for a company, your hiring process would be, if like we're looking for this person, if you qualify, right, then we give you this amount of money and you work for us. But for open source, the priority is so sometimes you may hire some people who are very qualified for the job, does a great job, but maybe he's just here to treat it as a job, right? Obviously for startup, you're looking for that kind of mindset fit a bit more, but for open source projects, the mindset fit is the number one priority. If you are not actually passionate about the project, you're not joining because you love working on it, then there's no point of working at all, right? So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and even more so than startups in that sense, right? Because it's like, it's you've really got to love the thing that you're working on in that world.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Well, I'm doing that right now, and I can say it's very interesting. We literally go at rocket speed, and things pivot, and literally every few months we try different messaging to see if it sticks. Right? It's a very interesting, and it kind of looks like open source, I guess, because you need to have all that extra, you really have the extra energy there. But sorry, I interrupted you, Evan. Go for it.
Yeah. I guess I think eventually, like for maintainers, for collaborators to stick around for the long term, to some extent, people who've been with us for over all these years, they're not doing it because they want to get something in return. They do it because it's part of their life now. It's part of like, we're kind of like, oh, we're all people tied together by this thing, and we just want to see it continue to grow and be better.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Matthias, do you have any last word for the community and stuff about ViteConf for us?
I think that now the most important is that, I don't know when this is going out, but like next Tuesday, like join Discord. Like we are going to actually like watch together all the talks and discuss with the speakers in Discord. This is going to be in chat.vuejs.dev. So like have these two links, like vitecon.org/live, where the stream is going to be and the chat is going to show from Discord. And then join the community. The idea is that ViteConf is not like an end in itself. It will be great that after seeing all the ecosystem talks and everything, like they want to contribute more, they want to get involved, not only in Vite, because like if you see the talks, there are going to be around like 6 or 5 talks about Vite itself, but it's mostly about like the innovation happening on top of it. Mm-hmm. So I hope that all these communities also like will receive a lot of future contributors also.
Yeah. Well, this discussion certainly made me have a bit of FOMO that I just didn't ask you guys, hey, can I speak as well? Because I certainly have opinions on all this. But when I saw it happening, it's like, oh, all these amazing speakers are just going to go there. I'll focus on the other ones. But next time I'm there, because this sounds great.
Counts, no?
Sorry?
This counts as part
this
of
counts. I like it. Yes. Awesome. And so the official event is in October 10, right?
11.
Oh, 11. Okay, perfect. All right. So thank you very much. And we'll be sharing all these links when we go out with this one. And I'll make sure that this goes out before ViteConf. Otherwise, it's a little funny in the timing. Anyways, cheers, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.